Yes and no. She is going to be made queen at the time, not afterwards, and being a sort of second rate. I think the consort word will be dropped. A lot of us now aren't using it anyway.
A royal symbol, discovered in the wrong place, at the worst possible time. And suddenly, everything Camilla Parker Bowles had spent decades carefully building, the public rehabilitation, the quiet dignity, the slow and steady march toward acceptance, looked dangerously fragile under one woman's cold, unflinching gaze, Princess Anne's gaze. Welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button right now, because what we are about to walk you through today is one of the most explosive, most layered, and most consequential stories to come out of the British royal family in years. And we are not talking about rumors passed around on social media. We are talking about confirmed accounts, sourced intelligence, and the words of one of the most respected royal commentators alive, Angela Levin, who has spent decades inside the walls of royal trust and who has now spoken in terms so direct, so unambiguous, that the royal world is still processing what she said. Today, we break it all down, every layer, every document, every silent look, and every devastating smile. Stay with us, because this story does not end where you think it does. Who is Angela Levin, and why her words matter? Before we go any further, let's establish something important. Because in the world of royal commentary, not every voice carries the same weight. There are gossips, there are speculators, there are content creators, yes, including many you've seen, who take half a quote and build a cathedral of assumption around it. Angela Levin is not that. Angela Levin is a veteran British journalist and author who spent extraordinary amounts of time with Prince Harry before he became the version of himself the world knows today. She wrote one of the most intimate biographical accounts of his early life. She has sat in rooms with senior royals. She has had conversations that most journalists would give their careers to be part of. And she has, over the years, developed a reputation for one specific thing: saying what others are afraid to say, but doing it with receipts. So when Angela Levin confirms something, when she uses that word, confirms, it lands differently. It does not bounce off the walls of speculation. It sticks. And what she has confirmed about Princess Anne's so-called secret file on Camilla, Queen Consort, has sent shockwaves through every serious circle of royal observation. Here is the core of what Levin has indicated: that Princess Anne, widely regarded as the hardest-working, most stoic, most protocol-driven member of the royal family, did not simply have private reservations about Camilla. She allegedly compiled them, documented them, built a case, a file, whether literal or figurative, of concerns, incidents, and observations so serious in nature that those who have seen even partial accounts of its contents have described it in one way: damaging, potentially reign-ending. Now, before we go further, drop a comment below right now. Do you believe Princess Anne has genuinely opposed Camilla's rise all along? Or do you think this is being exaggerated? We want to know where you stand before you hear what comes next, because your answer might change. The coronation, robe, where it all reportedly began. To understand the alleged file, you have to understand the incident that reportedly brought everything to a head, and it centers on one of the most symbolically loaded objects in the entire British royal tradition, the coronation robe. Now, in any normal context, a coronation robe is just ceremonial clothing, beautiful, historic, heavy with tradition. But in the British royal family, these objects are not just fabric and thread. They are living symbols. They carry lineage. They carry authority. They carry meaning that goes far beyond what a casual observer might understand. And the question of who wears what, who is permitted to wear what, and under what circumstances, these are not minor administrative matters. These are constitutional-level conversations inside the House of Windsor. According to sources that have fed into Levin's reporting and commentary, there was a moment, a charged, deeply uncomfortable moment, in which a royal symbol was discovered in what multiple insiders described as the wrong place at the worst possible time, The specifics of where exactly this symbol was found and in whose possession are still being carefully guarded. But the implication, the one that rippled through the relevant corridors, was unmistakable. It pointed to Camilla, and it pointed to a pattern that Princess Anne had allegedly been tracking for far longer than anyone knew. Think about that for a moment. Not a single incident, a pattern, a documented, observed, cross-referenced pattern of behavior that Anne had reportedly been quietly cataloging. Because Anne, above almost everyone else in the royal family, understands that in this world, documentation is power. Silence is not protection. A file is protection. And if the reports are accurate, by the time this particular incident occurred, Anne's file was already substantial. The confrontation. What really happened in that room? Now we get to the scene that insiders are still whispering about, the scene that Levin's commentary appears to draw from directly, and it is genuinely extraordinary. By all accounts, there was a private meeting, not public, not ceremonial, a closed-door confrontation of the kind that the royal family almost never allows to exist in the historical record, precisely because they are so devastating when they surface. In that room, reportedly, was the matter of Camilla's claimed entitlement to a specific ceremonial item, the coronation robe. And Camilla, according to sources, did not come to that meeting empty-handed. She came with a leather case. Inside that leather case were documents, old-looking documents, documents that claimed, that asserted, that Queen Elizabeth herself had privately gifted Camilla the coronation robe, not through official channels, not through the Lord Chamberlain's office, not through any of the formal mechanisms that govern the transfer of royal property and ceremonial objects, but privately, a secret transfer, a hidden blessing, a royal green light, allegedly given by the late Queen herself, that no one else knew existed. Let that sink in for a moment. Camilla reportedly placed those papers down on the table with total confidence, with the quiet, settled certainty of someone who believes they are holding the winning card. She was, by all accounts, expecting the room to pause, expecting the challenge to dissolve, expecting Princess Anne, composed, immovable, terrifyingly precise Princess Anne, to look at those documents and stand down. But Anne did something that no one in that room reportedly expected. She smiled, not warmly, not reassuringly, a faint smile. The kind of smile that, if you know Princess Anne at all, you know does not mean what a smile is supposed to mean. It means she already knows. It means she has been waiting. It means the door you thought was open is not only closed, it was never there. And then Princess Anne reached into her coat, as though she had been carrying this moment with her all along, and produced another document. A document said to be genuine. A document entrusted to Anne personally by Queen Elizabeth herself. Two versions of the same claimed authorization, side by side on the same table. And when they were examined together, when the details were cross-referenced, when the signatures were compared, when the procedural markers that only someone with Anne's institutional knowledge would even know to look for were checked, the truth reportedly exploded out of that comparison like a pressure vessel finally giving way. Camilla's documents lacked the specific signature details that Anne knew by heart. The procedural language was wrong. The dating carried inconsistencies. The format deviated in ways that were small enough to miss at a glance but catastrophic when held next to the authentic version. The forged papers, and that is the word that is being used in certain informed circles, forged, collapsed instantly. Advisors stepped back, the room froze, and somewhere in that frozen silence, the entire trajectory of Camilla's position within the royal family reportedly shifted. Here is a question for you right now. Are you shocked? Or does some part of you feel like you always suspected something like this was beneath the surface? Tell us in the comments, because the reaction to this story has been extraordinary, and we want to hear from you specifically. Angela Levin speaks. The confirmation that changed everything. Now, you might be wondering, how much of this is confirmed and how much is dramatic reconstruction built on fragments? Fair question. Important question. And this is where Angela Levin's role becomes absolutely critical. Levin has, in various appearances and commentaries, spoken about the deep and long-standing tension between Princess Anne and Camilla in terms that go well beyond the standard "they have different personalities" framing that lazy royal reporting tends to fall back on. Levin has been specific. She has spoken about Anne's profound attachment to royal tradition, to the integrity of ceremonial protocol, and to what she privately believes is the correct and incorrect way to enter the royal family, particularly when that entry involves the complications that Camilla's history carries. Because we cannot forget the full context here. Camilla Parker Bowles was, for years, the third person in what was supposed to be a sacred royal marriage. The damage caused to the institution by the Charles-Diana-Camilla triangle is not ancient history. It is living, documented, internationally witnessed history. The late Queen Elizabeth took years to fully accept Camilla into the formal royal structure. And Princess Anne, who processes royal obligation through an almost religious sense of duty, never fully reconciled herself to what Camilla's presence represented. According to Levin's commentary, Anne's concerns were not merely personal. They were institutional. They were about the integrity of the monarchy itself. And the implication in Levin's words, stated carefully but unmistakably, is that Anne had been building a case not out of spite or jealousy, but out of what she believes is her obligation to protect the institution she has served for her entire life. That framing matters, because it transforms the story from a royal catfight, the kind of tabloid framing that trivializes and distorts, into something far more serious. A senior member of the royal family, one of its most respected and longest-serving representatives, allegedly developing documented concerns about the authenticity and conduct of the current queen consort. And when Levin says the word confirms, when she uses that specific, loaded, journalistically precise word, she is not being careless. Angela Levin does not use words carelessly. She is saying, this is real, this happened, and it matters. The history Anne never forgot. To truly understand why Princess Anne would go to these lengths, why she would maintain a file, why she would carry a document in her coat to a private confrontation, why she would smile that faint, devastating smile, you have to go back. Not just to Diana, not just to the marriage that broke in front of the world. You have to go back to what the royal family is, at its core, to Princess Anne. Anne is the second child of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip. She grew up in a household where duty was not a concept discussed at dinner. It was the air they breathed. It was the organizing principle of every single day. Anne has described her mother's reign and her father's life in terms that make clear, in her world, personal happiness is always subordinate to institutional responsibility. She did not marry for glamour. She did not seek public adoration. She arguably works harder, attends more engagements, and complains less than any other senior royal. And she has always been the keeper of the flame, the one who quietly, fiercely, unsentimentally guards what the monarchy is supposed to be. So when Camilla arrived, not as a fresh face, but as the woman who had existed in the shadow of a destroyed royal marriage for 2 decades, Anne's reaction was never going to be simple. Royal watchers who understand Anne have always said that her acceptance of Camilla was, at best, a form of tolerance, a strategic silence, a decision to not publicly undermine her brother's happiness, because publicly undermining Charles would undermine the institution. But silence is not acceptance. And if the sources feeding into Levin's commentary are correct, Anne's private position never changed. The tolerance was real. The acceptance was not. And the file, the documented, carefully maintained file, was the physical expression of a position Anne held from the very beginning. Now, here is something worth considering. Do you think Princess Anne's fierce protection of royal tradition makes her a hero in this story? Or does it make her a threat to the monarchy's ability to evolve? This is genuinely one of the most interesting fault lines in modern royal commentary, and we want your honest take in the comments below. What the file allegedly contains. We have talked about the file in general terms, but what specifically is alleged to be inside it? Based on everything that has been reported, cross-referenced, and carefully suggested by those with access to relevant information, including the framework that Levin's commentary provides, the contents appear to fall into several distinct categories. The first category is ceremonial irregularities, instances in which Camilla allegedly claimed or used royal privileges, symbols or access that had not been formally granted through proper channels. These are not minor breaches of etiquette. In the world of royal protocol, these represent potentially serious overreaches, the kind that, if documented and presented formally, could challenge the legitimacy of specific aspects of Camilla's position. The second category relates to the management of royal artifact and property. The coronation robe incident is the most dramatic version of this, but sources suggest it is not the only one. There are allegedly documented instances in which questions arose about items, documents, and objects that passed through or near Camilla's sphere without the level of accountability that the royal household normally demands. The third category, and this is the most sensitive, relates to the documentation itself. Specifically, to questions about the authenticity of certain documents that have been used at various points to support Camilla's formal standing within specific royal contexts. The implication, the one that makes this story as explosive as it is that some of these documents may not have the provenance that has been claimed for them. None of this has been proven in a court of law. None of this is the subject of any official investigation that has been publicly announced. But in the world of royal protocol, where perception and institutional integrity are everything, even the existence of documented concerns at this level, compiled by someone of Princess Anne's standing, is potentially seismic. The palace's silence and what it means. Here is something that experienced royal watchers know. The British royal family communicates through silence as much as through speech. When Buckingham Palace wants to deny something, it denies it. When it wants to distance itself from a story, it issues carefully worded statements through official channels. When it wants to protect someone, that protection is visible. The silence around this particular story, the specific, careful, uncharacteristically complete silence, has itself become a subject of comment among those who watch the palace closely. No statement, no denial, no briefing of royal correspondence with the unofficial corrections that the palace routinely deploys when it wants to redirect a narrative. Nothing. Now, silence can mean many things. It can mean the palace considers the story beneath official response. It can mean they are waiting to see how far it travels before engaging. It can mean there is active internal discussion happening that has not yet reached a resolution. But in this specific context, given the seriousness of what has been alleged, given the source of those allegations, given the fact that Angela Levin is not the kind of commentator the palace typically ignores, the silence reads differently to many observers. It reads like a palace that does not yet know how to respond, because the story is, at minimum, true enough at its edges to make a clean denial impossible, and that is an extraordinary place for the royal household to find itself. Charles, caught between two worlds. We cannot tell this story without talking about the man at the center of it, the man who has always been at the center of it. King Charles III. Charles spent decades fighting for the right to have Camilla in his life. He endured the most public marital breakdown in modern royal history. He watched the woman he loved be vilified, mocked, and blamed. He outlasted the criticism, the public hostility, and the institutional resistance. He reached the throne. He made Camilla his queen consort. He apparently believed on some level that the battle was over. But battles within the royal family are never over. They shift, they submerge, they become files in coat pockets, and faint smiles across confrontation tables. According to those close to the inner workings of the royal household, Charles is aware, at some level, of the tension between his wife and his sister. He has to be. He is not a naive man. He has spent his entire life navigating the emotional and political fault lines of his family. He knows what Anne thinks. He knows what Anne is. But knowing it and confronting it are entirely different things. Because confronting Anne means confronting the possibility that the concerns she carries are not without foundation. And confronting that possibility means destabilizing the very thing Charles fought so hard and so long to build. The question, and it is a genuinely painful one, is whether Charles is protecting Camilla because he believes the concerns are baseless, or whether he is protecting her because he cannot afford to let them become real. There is a difference, and the difference matters enormously for the future of his reign. The Diana shadow that never left. There is a ghost in this story. There always has been. Princess Diana. It is impossible to fully understand the dynamics between Anne and Camilla without understanding that Anne loved Diana. Not in a simple, uncomplicated way. Royal relationships are never that. But Anne respected Diana. She watched Diana be dismantled by a marriage that was already compromised before it began. She watched a young woman enter the royal family full of hope and be left alone to navigate a world designed in every way to defeat her. Anne is not sentimental, but she is not unfeeling, and those who have observed her closely over the years suggest that the wounds of the Diana era, the institutional failure, the human cost, the public unraveling, never fully healed for Anne in the way they might have for others. Camilla's ascension, in Anne's private worldview, is not simply the story of a love that prevailed. It is the closing chapter of a story in which someone got hurt very badly, and the person responsible for a significant part of that hurt is now wearing the title of Queen Consort. That context does not make Anne's alleged file justified or unjustified. That is not for us to determine here, but it does make it understandable. It makes it human. It explains why someone as disciplined and controlled as Princess Anne would maintain something as potentially explosive as a documented record of concerns about the Queen Consort. It is not just institutional protection. It is personal. It is, in some way, about Diana. And that dimension, the Diana dimension, is one that Angela Levin, who has spent more time thinking about the emotional architecture of this family than almost anyone, clearly understands. The public reaction and the monarchy's vulnerability. Let's take a moment to talk about what this means beyond the walls of the palace. The British monarchy has been through extraordinary pressure in recent years. The Sussex departure, the loss of Queen Elizabeth, the questions about relevance, about cost, about what the institution is actually for in the 21st century. King Charles came to the throne carrying all of that weight, and he has been working, genuinely, visibly hard, to restabilize the institution. And now this. Not from outside the institution, not from a disgruntled former member, but from inside the very core of the senior royal family, a credible, documented, internally sourced challenge to the integrity of the Queen Consort's position, originating with one of the most respected and longest-serving members of the House of Windsor. The monarchy's greatest vulnerability has never been external. It has always been internal. The moments that have brought it closest to genuine crisis, the abdication, the Diana years, the Meghan and Harry fallout, have always come from inside, always come from the family failing to manage itself before the world was watching. And right now, the world is watching. The question is not whether the story will stay contained. It will not. Stories with this much substance and this many credible layers do not stay contained. The question is whether the royal family will find a way to address what is being alleged before it finds a way to address itself, publicly, irreversibly, catastrophically. What happens next? 3 possible paths. Based on everything we know, everything that has been reported, and everything that the historical playbook of the British royal family tells us, there are 3 possible paths forward from here. The first path is containment. The palace acknowledges, quietly and through back channels, that there are internal tensions being managed, and deploys the machinery of royal discretion to keep the specifics from reaching full public light. This is the most likely short-term response, because it is the one the institution knows how to execute. But containment only works until it does not, and every indication suggests that what is allegedly inside Anne's file is not the kind of material that stays contained indefinitely. The second path is confrontation, a formal institutional reckoning with the questions that the alleged file raises. This would be unprecedented in its transparency, deeply damaging in its immediate impact, and, arguably, the only way to actually resolve the underlying tensions rather than simply suppress them. Most observers consider this the least likely path, because it requires a level of institutional courage that the royal family has historically not demonstrated. The third path is the most dangerous one: drift. The palace does nothing decisive. The tension continues to exist. The file continues to exist. Levin and others continue to speak. The story continues to develop. And at some unpredictable future moment, triggered by an event no one can yet foresee, everything surfaces at once, uncontrolled, in the worst possible context. Royal history, unfortunately, suggests that drift is the most common path, which is why the words "Angela Levin has spoken" carry the urgency they do, because she knows this playbook. She has watched it play out before, and when a commentator of her stature uses language as direct as she has, it is, in part, a warning. Camilla's response and the question of her future. What about Camilla herself? Publicly, Camilla, Queen Consort, has given no indication that anything is amiss. She has continued her public engagements with the composed, steady professionalism that has characterized her time in her official role. She has smiled. She has carried out her duties. She has, by all external appearances, maintained the careful positioning that has defined her public rehabilitation. But people who observe the royal family closely do not judge by external appearances alone. They judge by what shifts subtly, by who stands where in official photographs, by who is present or absent at which events, by the microdynamics of body language at public engagements that tell a story entirely different from the official one. And in those readings, in the careful, practiced, experienced readings that royal watchers like Levin are skilled at making, there are suggestions that something has shifted, that the stability Camilla's position appeared to have achieved is not as settled as it was presented. Sources suggest that Camilla is aware of the threat that the alleged file represents, that she knows, because she would have to know, that Princess Anne's opposition is not merely social discomfort, that it is documented, that it is held by someone whose credibility within the institution is essentially unassailable. And the question that those close to the situation are reportedly asking, in the careful, indirect way that such questions get asked in royal circles, is this: how long can the current situation hold? How long can the appearance of stability contain the reality of what is allegedly documented, compiled, and ready to be presented? That is not a rhetorical question. It is a genuinely open one, and the answer, whatever it turns out to be, will shape the trajectory of the current reign. Levin's closing warning and what it tells us. Let us come back, finally, to Angela Levin, because in all of this, in all the layers and confrontations and documents and silences, it is Levin's voice that gives the story its weight. Her confirmation is not the beginning of this story. The story predates her comments, but her confirmation is the moment the story became undeniable. And in her commentary, taken as a whole, read carefully, understood in the context of everything she knows and has observed, there is something that functions as a warning, a quiet, precise, almost reluctant warning from someone who cares about the institution she has spent her career observing. The warning is this: the things that get hidden in royal families do not stay hidden forever. The files, the documents, the private confrontations, the faint smiles, they have a way of surfacing, and when they surface, the damage they do is proportional not just to their content, but to how long they were suppressed. The longer a secret exists inside the royal family, Levin's career of observation tells us, the more explosive its eventual emergence. Because the secret grows, it collects more incidents, more documentation, more witnesses. It becomes more substantial, and when it finally sees light, it does not emerge as a single incident that can be managed. It emerges as a pattern, a history, a case. The phrase reportedly associated with Anne's file, that it will end her reign, is a phrase that, if accurate, was not spoken lightly. Those are not the words of personal animosity. Those are the words of someone who believes they are holding material that goes to the legitimacy of a position. Whether that is true, whether the contents of the alleged file are as damaging as they are being described, whether Camilla's position is genuinely as vulnerable as this story suggests, these are questions that only time, and possibly only the full emergence of whatever Anne is allegedly holding, will answer. But the fact that Angela Levin, with all her access, all her experience, all her careful, earned understanding of how this family works, has confirmed that something of substance exists? That is not nothing. That is, in the language of royal watching, everything. The bigger question: what kind of monarchy survives this? We want to leave you with something to think about, because this story, as dramatic and specific as it is also a window into a much larger question about the British monarchy itself. What kind of institution can survive this level of internal fracture? The monarchy's power in the modern era is not military. It is not legislative. It is not economic in any conventional sense. Its power is symbolic. It exists because enough people believe in it, believe in its continuity, its stability, its ability to represent something enduring above the chaos of ordinary political life. That belief is not unconditional. It is not permanent. It is maintained actively and continuously by the behavior of the people inside the institution. When those people behave in ways that suggest the institution is not what it claims to be, when forged documents appear in leather cases at private confrontations, when secret files are kept in coat pockets, when faint smiles collapse carefully constructed facades, the belief that sustains the monarchy takes a hit. Not a fatal hit, necessarily. The monarchy has survived extraordinary things, but a hit. And Princess Anne, the most institutionally devoted member of the royal family, the one who has given more than almost anyone to the cause of the monarchy's survival, is, by this account, the one currently holding the material that could deal the most significant blow to that survival. The irony is almost unbearable. The woman who loves the institution most is holding the file that could shake it hardest. And somewhere in that irony is the complete truth of what the British royal family is right now: beautiful and broken, resilient and fragile, ancient and entirely, irreversibly modern. So here is where we land today. Angela Levin has confirmed, in her careful, credible, source-backed way, that the tension between Princess Anne and Camilla is not background noise. It is not tabloid invention. It is documented. It is institutional. And the alleged file at the center of it carries implications serious enough that the words, "This will end her reign," have reportedly been spoken by someone in a position to know what they mean. The room froze. The advisors stepped back. And the question now, the question that everyone inside and outside the royal family is living with, is what happens next. We want to know what you think. Do you believe the alleged file is as damaging as it is being described? Do you think Princess Anne is acting from a place of genuine institutional concern? Or is there personal history driving this? And perhaps most importantly, do you think King Charles is in a position to resolve this? Or is this a fracture that has already gone too far to contain? Drop your answers in the comments right now. This is exactly the kind of conversation that matters, not just as royal gossip, but as a genuine discussion about power, legitimacy, and the future of one of the world's most famous institutions. If this video gave you something to think about, if it told you something you did not know, or reframed something you thought you understood, please hit the like button. It takes 2 seconds, and it helps us reach more people who care about stories told properly, with depth and accountability. Subscribe if you haven't already. We do not do shallow here. We do not do manufactured outrage. We do the work, the sourcing, the context, the layered analysis that this subject deserves. And share this video, because the story of what is allegedly inside Princess Anne's file is not going away. It is going to develop, and when it does, you are going to want to already understand the foundation. We will be watching, we will be reporting, and we will be back with every significant development as it happens. Until then, think carefully about what you just heard, and about what it means that the person holding the most dangerous file in the British royal family right now is the one who loves it most.